Hi, Kathy.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Okay, I'm not hearing your sound, so
Okay,
we
I'm
have
not
to
muted.
fine tune that a bit.
Let me see if cam mic. Let me see. Audio.
Okay, perhaps if you can use some earphones,
Um,
okay, and a mic.
the setting. Can you hear that? Or I change the setting again. If you can hear that. Hmm. Let me go see if I can find earphone.
Okay, everyone, you are seeing this live because we are live. So please do share, and we'll do our best to bring this in without an echo. I'm not sure whether Kathy can hear me or not.
I can.
Oh, good. That's good. That's a start.
Honestly, not sure where to plug this in. Here we go. Can you hear me at all now?
Okay, I'm not getting any sound from your end yet.
Yeah, I can hear you, but I don't know what to do about the
Oh,
audio.
I can hear
It's
Kathy. Good. Can you hear me too?
yes.
Okay, people say they cannot hear me, so I know my microphone is on.
Oh, there is a chat. That's good.
So let me see what I can do with my sound. Let's see what happens now. Okay, I think we've got something now. Can you hear me yet?
I can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you too.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, this is good. This is great. So this is the first time we've met, Kathy.
This sure is.
Okay, so my guest for tonight is Cathy Cowan Becker, and she has a master's degree in public policy, okay, and in environmental studies as well. And she has written a really kick ass piece in Medium, okay, and on Facebook as well. That is a pretty thorough review of the planet of the humans. So I was very lucky to persuade her to come on tonight. I think it had something to do with Fadl Kaboub and the fact that we have a common association
Yeah.
with Fadl and things in common. Okay, I believe. Kathy is also. Are you a senior fellow or a fellow?
Yeah, at the Global Institute
at the
of,
Global Institute for Sustainable Prosperity.
that's correct.
Okay, should I pronounce that as GISP or GISP?
I'm honestly not sure. Either one's fine with me.
And fine with me too. Okay, but that's a fine place anyway. That does great work, and so we're very happy to have you on. And I think we probably ought to jump straight in. So, but can you please give us your views on Michael Moore's Planet of the Humans? And I will occasionally interrupt, if I may, to ask some questions and to clarify certain points.
Sure. So I'll try to digest this article as well as I can. The article I wrote for Medium, and I originally put on my Facebook page, and then friends asked me to put it on Medium. It's pretty long. It's a 20-minute read on Medium. So I think I basically said there's kind of three things about this film. I did outline where I thought there were some good points, but there were three real problems I had with it. One was that where it raised good questions, such as overconsumption or population growth, it did not delineate any solutions or any answers. It didn't even start to, it didn't even consider that. And these are not new questions. These are questions being discussed in the environmental community since forever. So I'm not sure where the filmmakers were during that, but as long as I've been a part of the environmental community, these questions always come up. They kind of paint a straw man of environmentalists as um, thinking that we are saying if you just slap a solar panel on something, we'll be fine. We can grow all we want. And I don't know any environmentalist who says that or thinks that. Using less energy efficiency, redesigning our society so that we use less because of the way we're designed, all of that is a core part of the solution to climate change, whether it's the Green New Deal or whether it's local plans to convert to 100% renewable energy. Using less is a core foundation of that. So I just thought they didn't present the solutions that are already being discussed. And another example is with the population question. So in the movie, Jeff Gibbs basically says there's too many people. And so you would think, well, okay, if you were to cut the population in half, then carbon emissions might get cut in half, but not really. Once you actually start looking at that, it's a very thorny, complicated issue because the people of the first world, such as the United States or Saudi Arabia or Canada, have by far the most carbon emissions. That's not where the population is growing. The population is growing in countries where people emit much less carbon. So where exactly are we supposed to reduce population? And this could turn to eco-fascism pretty quickly and really a very racist viewpoint. I'm not saying the filmmakers intended that, but that's how it could be used because they don't present any solutions. And as it turns out, there's a book called Project Drawdown, which I highly recommend to all of your audience. It's a lot of scientists and researchers and activists who looked at the 100 top solutions to climate change. It's all about the solutions and very wide-ranging look. And as it turns out, the second most important solution is education of girls and family planning. Basically, because women who have job opportunities, have economic independence, have education, have fewer children, and if women have, I guess, agency over their own reproductive rights, that's the key to reducing the reproduction rate. But that's not something that the filmmakers get into at all. So that whole area of just not presenting solutions to the issues it raises, that was one problem I had. And then a second problem I had,
Yes,
a lot
I
of,
had,
oh, I'm sorry.
if I may,
Mm-hmm.
I had that problem with the film as well. Uh, it was just such a surprise to me, okay, that Michael Moore, who seemed to be so favorable to the Green New Deal idea in other situations and other contexts, and certainly as a supporter of the Bernie campaign, that he would actually present such a film with no solutions discussed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so please go on. I just wanted to emphasize that. I think that's a very, very important point.
Well, I'm actually going to piggyback on that because I met Michael Moore because I went to Iowa to volunteer for the Bernie campaign, and I saw Michael Moore at several events, including one with Naomi Klein, where they heavily promoted the Green New Deal. So then, for just a few weeks later, to come out with a film that bashes renewable energy with a lot of wrong and outdated information, I found that shocking. And then just this past week, I found out from Bill McKibben's piece in Rolling Stone. Bill McKibben published a second response to this film in Rolling Stone, where he said that Naomi Klein had tried twice and in writing to talk Michael Moore out of doing this, and that Michael Moore has obviously ignored her. And if you're going to release a film about climate change and renewable energy, and you're not going to talk to one of the most, if not the foremost voice in in the discourse about this right now, Naomi Klein, and you're to ignore her, what are you doing? So
Yes, I thought that was very, very strange. Okay, and the reason why I thought so was that I thought it would be the most natural thing for him to have called her and gotten a review of the film from her, but prior to releasing the film.
yeah,
I
you
mean,
would think.
he was campaigning with her
Hmm.
in Iowa. They
Absolutely.
were together.
Yes.
Oh, they must have had a few dinners and a few lunches, and it was very strange. I found it very strange.
Yeah, I do not understand this. And I guess Bill McKibben wrote that he had started hearing rumors about this last June and that he had tried to reach out and that they had not responded. So if you're going to put somebody in your film and you're going to make them look really bad with selected edits of interviews, you need to, if you're doing journalism, give them a chance to respond. And they didn't do that. So I, it seems it's very strange. And I mean, besides being very disappointed, I'm also just really surprised.
Right, and very mystified.
Hmm. Yeah, I can't explain this. But I guess that gets into the second area of problems I had with the film, which was about its portrayal of renewable energy. And so a lot of this information I got from a science writer named Keaton Joshi, Jofhi. And so I would recommend to any of your viewers to look him up on Twitter because even just today, he had a long thread debunking a lot of what Michael Moore and the other two producers of the film, they had a live stream last night. And Joshi basically takes what they said in this live stream, they're doubling down on this misinformation about renewable energy, and he takes what they said just point by point and shows how it's a misunderstanding of what renewable energy is designed to do and how it's, I guess, designed to spread, and also how in his first Twitter thread about it, he talked about how outdated the information about renewable energy was, and I included some of that, with credit to him in my Medium piece.
Yes, I saw that. In fact, I linked to the Medium piece, to your Medium piece, and I
Mm-hmm.
linked to one of Joshy's pieces, okay, as well, and I linked to Bill McKibben's piece. Okay, so that can be found in the description. Uh, okay, so you have a number of links in the description, including two of Joshy's posts and a Yale Connections post, okay, as well.
Mm-hmm.
and but Cathy's post
Hmm.
and a YouTube that appeared this morning from just Have a Think, which I think drew very heavily, okay, on Cathy's piece, but is done in very high style and summarizes the critiques in a very, very nice way in roughly about 20 minutes or so. Okay, but a lot of the points made in that particular YouTube video were actually taken from Joshy's, okay, and from Cathy's posts, okay, and from also from Bill McKibben's reply, okay, as well.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's great.
okay, so let me stop the interruptions and let you go on, Cathy.
Okay. Well, a lot of this part is, a lot. I'm relying a lot on these other writers who really know the details. But as Keaton Joshi pointed out, on the solar farm that they talked about in Lansing, Michigan, where they said it had only 8% efficiency, that was built in 2008. And I think that footage was even from 2008. And they didn't say that in the film. They didn't mention the date. And that solar technology has become a lot more efficient than then. That back then, that farm could produce 64 megawatt hours of energy, and now it could do 436.
Ah, yes, I
Um,
noticed that too. That's a striking fact.
mhm. And they did the same thing with the wind farm, where they showed old wind turbines from a wind farm. They didn't say where it was or when it was. Well, it was in Hawaii, and it was decommissioned and removed in 2012. So that was 8 years ago. So the pictures from that are more than 8 years old. They didn't mention that either. They talked about the Ivanpah concentrated solar plant, which is a kind of solar plant that uses mirrors to increase the energy from the sun. And that particular plant was one of the first. It does require a startup from gas every morning, but subsequent plants do not, and it didn't mention that. There's another plant in Nevada that uses molten salt to hold energy overnight and then uses the energy from that to start up. So there was just a lot of things like that that it just misrepresented or cherry picked, um, which is, without giving any full context of this. And then it just used a lot of. I wrote a book chapter about climate denial for the book Climate Abandoned. Um,
Yes.
and so I talked about the history of climate denial from starting with Exxon and going through the Koch brothers and the tactics used. And I just recognized a lot of these same tactics, whether the filmmakers meant to or not. Like, for example, they say, well, solar and wind are intermittent. The sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow. And yes, that's true, but there are things being done about that, and at least being discussed. So, for example, home batteries are being discussed, and even larger battery arrays, not just home batteries, to hold the energy. So, for example, there's a small town in Ohio named Minster that has a solar array with a battery storage unit, and that powered a couple of factories in that town, including the Dannon yogurt factory. So, this can be mitigated. And then there's also the work of Mark Jacobson, a civil engineer from Stanford University, who's written a lot about 100% renewable energy. And so one thing he talks about is that as more and more solar and wind go on the grid, now it would require an upgrading of the grid for this to happen, but eventually you get a critical mass of it so that maybe the sun isn't shining right where you are, but it's shining somewhere reasonably nearby, and those electrons are going onto the grid, and so you get enough on the grid that the intermittency problem just kind of solves itself. At least, this is according to Mark Jacobson's research and the research of other research teams that are affiliated or inspired. So that's one thing that they did wrong. Another thing is they talk about the use of resources. So they basically say, actually, Ozzy Zaner, one of the producers, who's the main expert in the film, says it's not right. solar and wind are basically no better than fossil fuels because you have to dig up minerals and dig up natural resources to make the solar panel or the wind turbine.
Yes, and this is dead wrong, isn't it?
It's absolutely wrong, according to a large body of life cycle analysis research. Comparing the emissions and the footprint of these different technologies from beginning through to end. But I mean, if you think about it, if you build a if you build a coal plant, or if you have your car that requires liquid gasoline, there's all the, I guess, impact on the planet to build that, to have all the resources, the raw materials that go into that, into building that plant or your car. Then after that, you have to keep putting more raw materials into it to keep it going. You have to keep mining coal and transporting it
Yes.
over and burning it in the furnace. And you have to keep drilling for oil and refining that and transporting that, and, for you to fill up your car. So there's the initial investment of resources and then a continued investment. Whereas a solar panel or a wind turbine, there's the initial investment of resources. And they are getting, certainly the solar panels, a lot more efficient. So you can do the same thing with a smaller amount of resources, and then you put it up there. And current solar panels last for at least 25 years. The film says 10. That's also wrong. And you're not continuing to feed them with more resources. So obviously they're going to use fewer resources. But that makes intuitive sense, but the science has also shown this. And they don't make any, they're just wrong. And there's a graph that I took from Zeke Housefather of Carbon Brief that he had posted on Twitter that shows this, and shows from some of the life cycle resources that clearly coal and natural gas and oil are much more carbon intensive than solar and or concentrated solar. So that was another area.
Yeah, that was another area of a really serious error.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Where, for example, when you take account of the miles per gallon, okay, of electric vehicles,
mm-hmm.
For example, in California right now, it's what, 122 miles per gallon,
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. But compared to but conventional fuels, what, 30 miles per gallon or 27 miles per gallon or something, okay, on that
Mm-hmm.
order. Okay, and that includes the cost of the refueling, or the cost of any other conventional sources that feed into the electric vehicles.
Exactly. Yeah, so this question has been researched by Union of Concerned Scientists. And so the idea, this is what they say in the film, they show the unveiling of the Chevy Volt in 2010. And again, don't mention that this footage was from 2010, but then they say, well, the grid is based mostly on coal, so it can't be any better than driving just a gas car. Well, it turns out that's wrong. Like, we have research on this, so you can convert based on how dirty the grid is into what the miles per gallon and the equivalent emissions would be for an electric car as compared to a gas car. So where the grid is really clean, like in California, that's on the West Coast, has the cleanest grid in the country. It's like 122 miles per gallon.
Yes.
I live in Ohio, and it's still 56 miles per gallon where I live, and our grid is mostly coal. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is this doesn't take into account the build out of solar, the build out of wind, which has really barely begun. But we're making the grid cleaner. We're working on this. And so, for example, Cincinnati has just signed a contract to take 100% renewable energy from a new solar farm that's being built near Cincinnati. And for Cincinnati to say, we're going to commit to buying all of the energy to supply our city through this farm. That's what got the bank to say, okay, we'll finance building this because we know we have a customer and we know the city's good for it. So this sort of commitment can get these solar farms built. And this is in Ohio, where the legislature, people can look up House Bill 6 and see how unsympathetic the legislature is to renewable energy. They just, once again, decimated our renewable energy standard, but this is being done because the economics are calling for it. And this is what people want to have happen. So even in Ohio, the grid is starting to get cleaner. And the way it gets cleaner is through renewable energy. So then I guess that gets me to another talking point that's kind of from straight out from the denial handbook, which is, well, if you used fossil fuels to make any of these things, then you're stuck in fossil fuels and you're just holier than thou. And what good does it do because you had to use fossil fuels to make the solar panel? Well, it's kind of the answer to that's kind of, well, duh, because it's a transition. It's sort of like if you're moving from an old house to a new house, you move some of your stuff at a time, and maybe you haven't forwarded your phone calls or your mail yet. And there's a time when you're kind of between the two houses, but eventually you get all your stuff at your old house and you move it to your new house. And it's kind of like that with renewables. You have to start.
Yeah, sure. So, but just because you may be using fossil fuels to do certain things right now, okay, to build the panels, doesn't mean that that's going to be the case in 3 years or
Hmm.
5 years, okay,
Yeah, exactly.
as you move forward. And so that, okay, is the point, and that's kind of related to the film in a very critical way because they have examples that but take into account the kinds of methods that were used in 2008 and 2010 and also 2012 that are no longer operational anymore, that we've shifted over to other things now. If the film were a paper, if they tried to present it as a very long sort, okay, of academic paper, and they tried to get, okay, a peer review on the paper, it would never be published
Right.
because the technology in the film is simply out of date.
Yeah, absolutely. So one graph I included was the Swanson effect graph showing how the cost of solar has just plummeted since the 70s. It's literally down like 99%.
Yes.
And that's the efficiency, that's the cost of the little crystalline solar photovoltaic cells. And that's in part because there's more of them being built, and so the price goes down, but also because the efficiency has gone up so much. Um, and wind is also, the price is coming way down because a lot more of it is being built because it's cheap. So there's a lot of wind energy in Texas, and there's utilities down there that are offering free energy at night because there's so much energy put on the grid by the wind that they just have to get rid of it. So
Um,
it's
um,
very
um,
cheap to use that energy.
yes, it's very cheap, and if we compare how cheap it is to fossil fuels, it's now lower cost, okay, than fossil fuels, isn't it?
Hmm.
Both solar energy, okay, and also the but geothermal energy, okay, and wind energy, they're all cheaper now, aren't they?
Yeah, much, much cheaper. The prices are really falling and continue to fall. And then most of the new investment in, like, when investors build out new forms of energy, the vast majority of that is going into renewables instead of fossil fuels. And fossil fuels is just not, if I were an investor, if I had a lot of money to go invest on the market, I would not be investing that in fossil fuels. It's just not a good thing.
Right. So, what would happen if we withdrew the subsidies we're currently giving to the fossil fuel industries and we force them to compete, okay, on a head-to-head basis, okay, with the renewable fuels
Yeah,
at
they
this
wouldn't
point.
be able to. Um, I don't have the figures right in front of me because I didn't have that in my article, and probably should have, but fossil fuels are subsidized many times more than renewables are subsidized.
Yes.
So there's a group called Oil Change International that has done the research on that and I guess put into numbers what the subsidies are for fossil fuels versus renewables. And it's many times more for fossil fuels, just counting not only the, I guess, direct government subsidies, but things like breaks, like the government lets them mine coal on public lands for just pennies on the dollar for what that would cost if it was private land. Or they let them frack, and they're in Ohio, they're fracking in Wayne National Forest on parcels that they get for just pennies of what it would be if they had to go buy private land or pay a private landowner. And this is what's fueled the fossil fuel boom of, especially the fracking industry.
Just a question. They also made quite a bit in the film. In fact, I think they spent 40 minutes of the film on the biomass,
Hmm.
the conversion issue, and in the process, they developed a smear, okay, of of Bill McKibben. So could you say something about that?
Yeah, sure. So the the concerns about biomass, that's actually a reasonable point that the film brings up because biomass is there are many different kinds of different kinds of biomass. So if you grow corn or sugarcane and turn that into fuel, ethanol fuel, that's considered biomass. Or another form of biomass is to grow trees and then cut them down and chop them up and burn wood chips, and that's considered biomass. And they all have a lot of problems. Obviously, cutting down trees, maybe in the long run it's renewable, but to chop down those trees, because they might grow back, it's going to take them generations to grow back. And we don't have that kind of time right now. And it releases a lot of carbon to chop them down and burn them up. So, besides the fact that we need all the trees we can get to sequester carbon, and they also talked about trash incineration, which puts a lot of toxic substances into the air. So, like you said, they spent probably a third of the film on all this. All of that together is about 2% of our energy use in the United States, according to the International Energy Administration. So it's not large. It is concerning because there are forests in the southeast that are being chopped down and then sent to Europe to be burned there. So this is worth looking at. But what you mentioned about Bill McKibben is that back in, I think, 2010 or something like that, his small college in Vermont decided to move off of burning oil and onto a small wood chip plant to heat this college. And at that time, when this first started, he was supportive of it. But then more research was done and more information came to light about the carbon sequestration effect of trees, and that if you cut them down, that releases a lot of carbon. And especially if you think about doing that on a much larger scale than Middlebury College in Vermont,
Yes.
it's a big problem. And so Bill McKibben, years ago, changed his mind on that, has written several pieces against biomass, and they ignored all of it. So they just acted as if he still supported it when he doesn't. And again, did not return his attempts to correct the record on
So, why do we think, and what can we possibly infer concerning the motives, okay, of Michael Moore in releasing this film? It's very hard to believe that he would actually deliberately do something like this, considering the history that we have with him. On the other hand, okay, he's not okay an academic, so he's not necessarily used to checking things out in a very careful way. Okay, and he may have here simply relied on his friends who were actually making the documentary, okay, over a period, okay, of years, and just accepted their views as experts in the matter. Is that possible, do you think?
Yeah, I thought that at first, but he's continued to, since the film came out, there have been so many articles basically saying this information is wrong and here's exactly why and how it's wrong. And yet he went on the live stream last night and again said it doesn't matter that solar is more efficient. It doesn't matter that solar doesn't have as many emissions as fossil fuels or.
I'm sorry, it doesn't matter. How can he say that?
I don't know.
How
But
can he say
today's,
it doesn't matter?
yeah, it's Keaton Joshi went over, like, kind of took apart last night's live stream, which in all fairness, I have to say I haven't watched. I haven't had time to watch that one because it was an hour and a half. But
Yeah,
um,
because you've been so busy today taking phone calls, right?
yeah,
Not your people.
I've had other things going on. But yeah, people should look at Keaton Joshi's Twitter thread from today. It's very, very enlightening
I'm
about
sure it is.
what they got wrong. And so yeah, so here he's had plenty of opportunity to get the correct information and he's just ignoring it. And so when he ignores Naomi Klein, he ignores Bill McKibben, he ignores everything that's been written about his film and continues to put out this false information. What is going on? It does make you wonder.
Yes, it does. It certainly makes me wonder.
Yeah.
But it does speak to a little bit of a methodology question here. Is that the way a lot of the documentary filmmakers go about constructing a documentary? I mean, is that something that's a standard kind, okay, of methodology that's used in the industry, that they take essentially little bits and pieces and they put them together in kind of an argument, the kind of argument, okay, that a lawyer would use? Okay, and then they kind of ignore possible objections or checks or things like that. Okay, so that what they're trying to do is simply to paint a picture which is coherent, but not but necessarily true. Is that
Right.
standard in the industry?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, where you kind of have the story that you want to tell and you make the facts fit your story rather than the other way around. And I don't know. I would hope that that is not standard.
Well, yes, I would hope that it's not standard either.
The really good documentaries that are out there, I haven't felt that that was going on with them. And I haven't even felt that was going on with previous Michael Moore documentaries, although now I'm kind of questioning myself on that, thinking, well, maybe there's things I
Yes,
missed.
right. I found myself wondering about that too. You cannot help, okay, but wonder about it when you see the job that was done here. I just don't understand how it could have been done that way.
Yeah, I mean, this just seems so blatant that you would make a climate documentary and ignore Naomi Klein. Like, that's just not.
Yeah, Naomi Klein, okay, and also Bill McKibben,
Mhm.
and he knew you, okay, as well. He could have called you.
Oh, well, actually, he didn't. I'm sure he probably didn't know me. I just met him in Iowa at that one event, but I was just,
I see.
regular volunteer. So, but certainly he had access to any number of Green New Deal experts through the orbit of the Bernie campaign. AOC wrote the Green New Deal. There's a group called Data for Progress and a
Yes,
woman
I
named
know. I
Brianna Gunn
know.
Wright who wrote a lot of that. Like all of that would have been, Josh Fox would have been available, and Josh has spoken out very forcefully about this.
Ah, yes, he did. I saw him on Rising, but speaking against it.
Hmm.
But for some reason, he didn't come over very well there. Okay, in other words, he seemed to me to be uh, he seemed to be leveling, some ad hominems and labels, okay, at Michael in that particular appearance,
Hmm.
rather than actually addressing the specific arguments in the film. I was surprised at that, and I didn't know what to think about it. And that's what really served to get me to investigate some of the posts that had come up
Hmm.
on the film, and so that's what actually led me to you,
Oh,
and
wow.
from there to some of the other posts. I mean, I saw Josh Fox, and I thought to myself, "There's something crazy going on here. I got to find out about this." And then I started to investigate. So that's what happened.
Wow. Well, I guess Josh Fox has actually shared the stage with Michael Moore at various events, and may feel, I'm not saying that he does because I don't know for sure, but may feel like I feel just kind of betrayed that Michael Moore is saying all these things that are basically attacking the whole Green New Deal, which we need to ensure the survivability of the planet. If we want to, literally, whether we have a livable planet for human civilization and life on Earth is on the line here. And for Michael Moore to irresponsibly put out wrong, false, and dangerous information about this, it's really bad.
Oh, I know, and we have such a short time to actually do something about it.
Hmm.
As well, we don't have time for diversions such as this one,
Exactly.
and we have to develop the political thrust of the movement in such a short time and under such unfavorable conditions
Hmm.
that this is extremely damaging.
Yeah. Yeah. If it had just explored some of these issues about overconsumption and the growth imperative. Like we really do have to, as a society, take a look at this idea that we have to constantly grow. And there is a finite planet. We cannot operate that way indefinitely. We've got to stop operating that way really soon. And if he had looked at that and looked at how can we make that happen, um, and actually talked to people who've been thinking about these issues for a long time, I would have had no problem with this film. But to veer it to all this misinformation about renewables that just isn't true, to set up this population question with no solutions. Um, One person I talked to who told me she watched this film said she came away just in despair that nothing can be done. And it's just not true. And a lot of things can be done. We need the political will to do them, but there are things that can be done.
Okay, so how should we approach but trying to use the video as an opportunity to bring forward the really significant issues that we currently have with respect to the kinds of policies we ought to be pursuing on the climate. In other words, how do we go forward from here, okay, and make some lemonade out of the lemons that we have in this film?
Yeah, limits for sure.
Yeah, we need to make some lemonade.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not really sure how to tell people to just start Googling because some of these discussions I learned through my master's program. For example, economists who are talking about other measures of growth besides gross domestic product. They're looking at,
Sure.
you know, public health or environmental health or happiness quotient or different things like that. Or I think I'd say look at Project Drawdown. That's very wide ranging. Um, and just read the experts. The people who have been thinking about this for a long time, find them and read what they have to say. And it's not always as sensationalist as this doc is not ever as sensationalist as this documentary. And it's thorny. It's not always black and white. I'm so understand that it's not going to be instantaneous solutions that, have, that you just plug and play, then there's going to be a whole range of solutions. So, like the Green New
Right, and
Deal.
they're also going to be hard work.
Yeah, right.
Okay, and but also the film ignored the whole regenerative agriculture field,
Yeah, that's another big
and the
solution.
kind of contribution that can make. Okay, and I was very surprised at that because that area is really fascinating. Okay, and interesting. And you
Right.
could have made a wonderful documentary about that.
Yeah, and there are documentaries about that. And so regenerative agriculture is agriculture that puts carbon into the ground instead of releasing carbon. And our
All right,
current,
that's exactly what we need to do. I
Mhm.
noticed the other day that there's a new measure, okay, of the parts per million, okay, of carbon, okay, in the air now.
Mhm.
It's gone up to 418
Mhm.
from 416.
Mhm.
So it's still going the wrong way.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And we need every solution. I mean, in my opinion, we need to do it all. We need regenerative agriculture. We need a mass rollout of renewables. We need to redesign our cities. We need high-speed rail to displace flying. We need, this is controversial, but I think we need a carbon tax, but with the tax on the fossil fuel corporations, with the money returned to American households, so that would be sort of a redistribution, not just a redistribution of wealth from the fossil fuel industry to the rest of us, but also because prices of things made with fossil fuels would go up, but the return of the money to households would give them more in that they would get more in that money than they would pay in increased prices, so that would tide them over in transitioning this economy. And I think we need the Green New Deal with to do all of this, to also have a civilian climate conservation corps to limit toxic waste. We need to replace all these lead pipes, and not just Flint, but hundreds of other cities. And we need energy efficiency in buildings is a huge one.
Absolutely.
So cities are responsible for 70% of our carbon emissions, and within cities, buildings are the top source of emissions. We need
Right.
these
Okay. And
buildings.
that was a big part, okay, of Bernie's platform also.
Yes, absolutely. So to
Very
see Michael
significant
Moore
part.
like come out against this, it's like
Yeah,
you
why
can't.
don't you read Bernie's platform, Michael?
Yeah, like didn't you just tell me in Iowa that you were for the Green New Deal? Did you have any understanding what you were talking about? But yeah, so energy efficiency, using less, making buildings net zero. All of this, the solution is in everything. Every part of our lives, there's some piece of the solution.
And not only some piece of the solution, but when you put all the pieces of the solution together, the picture that emerges is really wonderful. I
Hmm.
mean, it's a new world for us.
Hmm.
It's a new way of living for us.
Absolutely.
And it would just be so much better than what we have now. And all of the things we've been through over the last 40 years or so.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine cities that are bikeable and walkable and that have public transportation based on electricity that doesn't emit carbon, so they're cleaner. It's, that's just the beginning.
Have we left out anything important?
Oh gosh, let me look back at my article to see if there's anything else I left out. I guess just one other point about the use of biofuels for transportation. It seems like the film, the point it was trying to make is that millionaires are investing in biofuels as airplane fuel, and so they can keep. And so that's why they showed Richard Branson. And well, first of all, since that footage, Branson has I guess, renounced palm oil and won't even serve anything that has palm oil on his flights. But the second point to make about that is obvious answer to that is high-speed rail, which has been shown to displace flying in short trips or medium-haul airline trips. The very long trips, high-speed rail might not work, but between certain cities in Europe, it's reduced flying by like 80%. Like say between Paris and Lyon, France, that line, the airline flights got reduced by quite a bit, and there's I think some flights, some lines in Germany where flying was almost phased out altogether. So it's not like people would stop flying completely, but it would cut into a lot of these shorter trips for flying, and then you're working off electricity, so you're not using something that has to have liquid fuel. So they would probably say, well, that's a techno fix, but um, I guess another point is that the countries that are underdeveloped. So let's take India, which has over 1 billion people, and of them,
1.4 billion nearly.
wow, even more. So about 300,000 of those people do not have electricity. So that's a population about the size of the whole United States of people who do not have electricity. So are we going to tell them, no, you cannot have electricity? Like, that's not something we could tell them. They want electricity, and if we were in their shoes, we would want it too. So,
Right. And I'm not about to tell them they can't have electricity.
right, but if they can, get that through putting up solar panels instead of building a whole coal plant and mining a whole bunch of coal and like all the hassle of building and mining coal and burning coal, which is very dirty, and causes a lot of air pollution kills 7 million people around the world each year. It's shocking
Yes.
to actually look at the figures. They could leapfrog us and go straight to solar, not have the air pollution problem, not have the infrastructure that coal plants require, and get the electricity they need. So why would we not support
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't oppose it. I'd love it.
that?
That would be great. Okay, so I'm going to ask our attendees what questions they have for us. Okay, I see a lot of comments here, but okay, I don't see any questions. So, do we have any questions for Cathy?
I'll try to answer them. I do see a comment about Inroads, which is a great tool through I believe that's the one through Climate Interactive. So there's a really interesting simulation that you can get and do in a group setting where each person takes the part of one of the countries and they perform climate negotiations like you would have seen at the Paris Summit or any of these annual climate summits, and then put in what was agreed to into the simulation, and it tells you how much that lowers carbon emissions. And it shows you that it's really pretty difficult to get carbon emissions down. It takes a lot. Um, so that's a very useful tool, but you can put in, as this person says, energy, land use, consumption, agriculture, and all kinds of policy.
Okay, there was a comment here about, well, okay, it's just a link to Michael Moore's discussion with Claire Farrell.
Yeah, that was a live stream last night.
Right. I haven't had a chance to watch that. What did he say in that live stream? And what did she say in return?
That's the one I haven't had a chance to watch either, but
Uh,
if you go to the Keaton Joshi thread on Twitter, I'm not sure if there's a way for me to put the link to that in the comments.
yeah, there are. What I can do is switch the view.
Oh, here, I'll just put it in my private chat with you, and if you want to move it over there, you can. But Keaton Joshi takes
Well,
that point.
if I share the screen, I'm not sure what your the controls allow you to do. But if I share the screen in this way, okay, I don't know if you can share anything. Okay, I know that I can share something. So this is in a tweet from Ketan Joshi.
And so it's a whole Twitter thread, and it's very substantive. And he takes things they say in that live stream point by point. So if you've watched that live stream, then I would recommend also looking at that thread.
Okay, hang on a second. Let me go to Twitter. And let me search for Ketan Joshi. Here he is. And let me share the screen here and see what we can see. I think we probably can both see that.
hmm
Okay, so what is it I'm looking for?
If you scroll down on his page, and I'm not sure how far down this particular tweet, the first tweet is, but it's a few tweets down because it's recent,
Okay.
and it'll be a whole Twitter thread.
The global methane crisis. Oh, that's bad.
Yeah, his whole Twitter thread is very enlightening, or actually his whole Twitter page, but this particular thread is really good, but it looks like it's a little ways down.
Okay, I'll keep going. And hopefully we'll find it.
It was
Something like
from
COVID-19 and climate
that,
action.
I believe that might be it actually. Oh, and here it is. It's the one that has, well, I don't know. It says a few tweets about this interview, which I think has some telling and important comments on energy and technology. Time for a thread.
Okay, let's see. Is it further down?
Um, oh gosh, I wish I could.
Okay, is it further down or is it just this thread?
I think that might be it.
Okay, so let me show the thread. They then quickly move into capacity factor.
Yeah,
This
if
is
you go,
where it
that's
gets
part of the
wild.
thread. So if you go to the top of that now, that's one of the tweets in the thread.
Oh, that's one of the tweets, but that's not on the top of it. Okay, so I
Yeah,
see. Yeah,
yeah. So
there's
if you scroll
Michael.
all the way to the top of that, that'll be the thread.
Okay, I'll go. It's a long
Yeah, that's it.
thread. Okay, a few tweets about this interview, which I think is some really telling important comments on energy and technology. Okay, do you want me to blow up the graphic?
Well, that's just a screenshot from the live stream. So
Yes,
really
I
it's the
see that,
content in each of the tweets after that that is most important.
which are important. Okay.
hmm
Okay, so he refers to by Claire Farrell there, actually, a
This is where he
co-founder
says
of
it doesn't
Extinction
matter.
Rebellion, asks a question about the old info in the film. The solar farms are old, okay, and newer ones are more efficient. I had that question too. The response is roughly, it doesn't matter, they're made from fossil fuels.
Yeah, which that point had been addressed.
Yes, it has been addressed. This slots neatly into the underlying logic of the film. Any non zero technological presence is harmful. Solar is as bad as coal. Wind is as bad as gas. Mining fossil fuels emissions are only okay if they're used to build film cameras or server farms for YouTube.
Yeah, that particular tweet's sarcastic, but this is a very long thread. So I would just recommend that your viewers go check it out.
Okay, so when this is over, viewers, what I will do is add this link from the thread to the other links. and you can check it right out then. It looks like that thread is a pretty important one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any questions anybody would like to ask of Cathy before I let her go?
Just going on. Somebody asked me, how does it feel to be a career leftist in the pocket of Big Green? LOL. Considering I do all this as a volunteer, and I've actually probably spent more money. Like I funded my own trip. I went to Paris during the climate negotiations in 2015 and paid for that myself. So, I wish I was in the pocket of Big Green, maybe. um,
Okay, so message to Lana. Uh, what I'll do is I'll put the link to Joshy's tweet, okay, in there, so you'll be able to get his whole name.
mhm.
Okay, so that will not be a problem.
And someone asked, where am I from in Ohio? I'm in the Columbus area. So very cool that you're up in the Canton area.
Where in Ohio are you, Cathy? I'm in the Canton area.
Yeah,
How close are you to Denison University?
about an hour. And Denison is where Fadl is, as you know.
Yes, and where the
But I've done a
institute is.
couple of Green New Deal town halls with him. So my piece was, here's what the Green New Deal would do, or what you could do under the Green New Deal. And then his piece was, and here's how we pay for it. And talks about
Ah, yes. Here's how we pay for it.
MMT, which I'm sure your viewers are very familiar with.
Yes, we know a lot about it here, but we tend to focus here on platinum coins to pay for it, or also something called overt congressional financing, which is basically just the Congress sending an order to the Fed
Mm-hmm.
to place the money that's necessary to spend an appropriation into the Treasury spending account as soon as the appropriations bill is passed.
So basically, Congress says, we're going to do it because it needs to be done. Is that a fair?
It's not just we're going to do it, okay, in the sense, okay, that we're going to appropriate it, but we're also going to order the Federal Reserve to place the money necessary for the spending inside of the Treasury spending account. Okay, so the Treasury is no longer dependent on any taxing that may go on, okay, or any bond sales. In fact, it won't have to sell any more securities, okay, at all. Okay, because the method, which is really simply two sentences, okay, that have to be added, but two appropriation bills, and what those two sentences say essentially is, uh, okay, place the money for the appropriation in the Treasury spending account, and place the money to pay off any securities that are falling due, and the money that's necessary to pay the interest in the Treasury spending account, okay, as well. So over 30 years, there will be no more national debt. Why is it a desirable thing not to have any national debt? Well, it doesn't matter from a fiscal sustainability point of view, but it matters from a political point of view. That is, no more debt terrorists in the United States, because the debt would be getting smaller and smaller and smaller until, okay, it's finally gone. Of
Okay.
course, there are reasons why you'd want to float some debt in certain situations, take money out of the economy. But the basic principle is still not to have it so it can be used as a political tool against you, which is the way it's used now all the time.
Okay.
So that's the way that I generally address things here. The standard kind, okay, of MMT position is to educate people so that they understand that the level of debt and the debt to GDP ratio do not count for fiscal sustainability. They are not important. So if you want to fund things through Treasury securities, that's fine. I personally don't care for that because it still means that large corporations and financial interests and also fairly rich people are getting interest that is not earned from money that is, sitting idle, therefore contributes in some way to the inequality we see, in our nation. So I'm not really for that. But there are counter arguments to the argument, okay, I just made, and I'm not too heavy, okay, on that argument. The reason why I prefer simply funding outright is because I want to get rid of the debt issue as a political issue.
Right.
Okay, and the views I have on that, okay, are let's say more convinced of the importance of doing that than many of the other people who accept the MMT point of view seem to express. I mean, I think it's essential we get rid of that as a political issue. So there's no more Peterson Foundation
Hmm.
or anything. I don't want to have to cope with them anymore.
So I, I guess my turn to ask you another question, which is, so we just came up with literally trillions of dollars for Corona response, most of which went to large corporations and
Yes.
people who already didn't need it. But it could have gone to the American people, but we found the money quickly. Why is that? And why can we not do that for the Green New Deal and Medicare for All?
Well, the reason why is because, I mean, I know you're going to hear this reason maybe in 2 or 3 weeks, even, but certainly 3 months from now or 6 months from now. The reason, okay, that you're going to hear is, oh, well, we had to sell so much debt in order to pay for the earlier relief bills that we now have such a heavy debt problem that we can no longer afford to fund all the things people need by selling Treasury securities. Okay, and then of course our counter arguments are going to have to be, well, don't sell Treasury securities, just mint some platinum coins. In fact, just mint $100 trillion platinum coin, and it will pay for all the deficits for many years to come and for paying the debt down to zero, okay, as well. So there's no problem. All you need is $100 trillion platinum coin. And by the way, to put in a plug for myself, the only book that's yet been written on the platinum coin is mine, and it's available as an Amazon Kindle ebook.
Awesome.
So,
So somebody has asked what are the best ways to reduce consumption, and so there may be other answers to this besides what I'm about to give, but one way is efficiency, energy efficiency. So what we were talking about, one program under the Green New Deal would be to create a lot of jobs by retrofitting buildings or, basically making it so that we use less. Another way is, for transportation, have a lot more public transportation, have cities that are designed where the building is going on inside the city rather than in urban sprawl, so that then people can walk or bike to places safely, to have bike lanes, to have sidewalks. So just to basically design our lives around doing less or having ways of doing things that do not consume as much. Another way is what we were talking about earlier. If we change the way we measure the health of the economy and change it to actually measure health rather than growth, then we don't have as much of an incentive to have endless growth because growth does not have to be required. The metric you're looking at is health rather than growth. So those are, I guess, a few things we can do, and what we talked about um, with education and family planning for women, um, so that basically the birth rate goes down and there's fewer, I guess, not as many human beings have need growth. Um, so yeah, that I'm sure there may
So those are things we can do, and we can also but try to recreate, okay, our agricultural system,
be.
okay, and try to get out, okay, of factory farming, and
Absolutely.
that is likely to help our consumption as well, but considerably, and also to help with the kinds of things that we're dependent upon to produce our present food consumption. Things which are very wasteful, okay, of fossil fuels right now. So that's a big thing, okay, that we can do, Lana.
Yeah, that's really important. Food and agriculture is kind of the other issue besides big oil. There's also big ag. They're both really serious
Yeah, big
issues.
ag, really important.
And I guess just the whole idea that I don't know a whole lot about this, so somebody could maybe look into this more and learn and teach me about this the whole idea of the circular economy. So if you're going to mine some materials and turn them into something, right now, we just have a straight line economy where you mine the materials, turn them into something, people use it for a while, and then it goes to the landfill. And instead of that, it seems like one of the major challenges of the next generation is to figure out how do you commission all of these objects, like washing machines and vacuum cleaners, and how do you use those parts for something else? But that's going to become
Yeah.
very important to do.
Now, it's going to take some time to change, okay, our lifestyles, but uh, it's really surprising how much we can do in a short amount of time when we're forced to do it. And of course, we have the example of the coronavirus crisis, okay, at this point, which is having a great impact on our lifestyles, at least for a short time. But the impact is so great that right now the smog is gone from Los Angeles.
Right.
I'm seeing pictures of the sky completely clear.
Yeah, I have a good friend in Chicago that stepped outside of her condo there and looked up and saw stars, and she'd never seen them in the city before. And I
Yes.
told her that's because the smog has gone away. But yeah, I think we really need to look at when we go back to like, let's not just go back to what we were doing before COVID. There's practices we're learning now, and we need to keep those. People can do a lot, like we're doing right now over video conference. That a lot of work can be done that way. A lot of conferences or speakers, speaking events can be held that way, and that right there will cut a lot of carbon emissions as well as a lot of stress if you don't have to commute every day at rush hour at 8 a.m.
All right. So buy stock in free conference call and Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we have any more questions? Okay. So if not, I'm going to let Cathy go with my great but thanks. I want to point out to you that the suggestion for this live stream was actually from Lana Dell, who brought uh, who told me originally about the Michael Moore video and how upset people were with it.
Hmm. Wow.
And,
Thank you, Lon.
okay, and so she asked me to look into it, and that's what led me to the Rising broadcast, and then from the Rising broadcast to all kinds of other information, including your fine post.
Wow. Well, thank you for looking into it, and thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Okay, and also thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, happy.
It was really exciting.
It was great show. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I hope we can do this again soon. Okay, I plan to keep in touch. Okay, and I hope that you do too.
Absolutely.
And I suspect that we're going to have a lot of other issues to talk about in the future.
No doubt.
Okay, so thank you, Cathy.
Yeah, thank you too. Bye.
Okay, bye. Okay, so uh, yeah, Cathy really rocks, doesn't she? And she did a great job. And by the way, seeing her on this live stream is no excuse for failing to read her post. Okay, her post is linked to, so you have it, okay, in the description, and I'll be adding the tweet from Joshi from Ketan by Joshi, Ketan, and so you'll be able to see that too. And I have two of Joshi's blogs that I link to as well. So you'll have plenty of literature to get into, and be sure to read Cathy's carefully. It's very well written and very well documented, and she put it up in an amazingly short amount of time. She's obviously a very good writer and researcher. So we're very grateful to have had her here tonight, and we're grateful to Lana for sticking a bee in my bonnet about this. I don't know. I'm sure I would have gotten to it sooner or later, but I don't know how many more days would have passed. So I think I'm going to end a little bit early tonight. Okay, unless there are some more comments that express a desire for me. How does Cathy feel about nuclear energy? Hopefully, she'll address the thread from this, okay, and answer the question. But I can tell you how I feel about nuclear. Okay. The way I feel about nuclear is I would much rather have a power system that's based on distributed power sources than on centralized power sources. Okay, I think that the thorium plants, which is the kind of nuclear people are talking about now, are much more stable than the kinds of nuclear power plants that we have now. But they are still expensive, and they still involve large corporations, and they still involve the political costs of an energy lobby that will be very powerful. And so, on political grounds, uh, they don't sound attractive to me. And maybe Cathy would agree with that. I don't know. But you certainly can look her up on Facebook and directly ask the question of her. I'm sure she's taking Facebook friends, okay, at this point. Evelina asks, don't we need the right government to invest in a Green New Deal? Doesn't look like it's happening, though. We need to have the right government, in particular, Evelina. We need not to have either Joe Biden or Donald Trump in the presidency. So we need to keep on with the Biden record in hopes that we can get somebody else having the nomination. Of course, neither Kamala Harris nor Buttigieg nor Klobuchar are going to be acceptable alternatives to Joe Biden, and Beto O'Rourke is completely out of the question. But if we could somehow arrange to get some decent people in, like Jay Inslee and Jeff Merkley, and hoping against hope, maybe Bernie Sanders, then we could begin to talk about actually having the Green New Deal soon. And Matthew Arado, hope I pronounced your name correctly, Matt, asks, have any other countries enacted anything close to a Green New Deal? Not yet, but there are a lot of countries in Europe looking at what they call a Green Deal over there. They would not put the new on it because they don't have the American historical background where the New Deal is a magic phrase, but they call it the Green Deal over there. And there's a lot of political pressure for a Green Deal in Europe at this point. A lot of people who are writing about it, okay, and talking about it. You can find that out if you go to and subscribe to Social Europe, where they have all kinds of blogs about what's going on in politics, okay, in Europe. And from time to time, there are some articles on the Green Deal there that you can find. Avromano says, like HAARP. So, Carmen, what is HAARP? Have I forgotten something I should be remembering? Is that the HARP thing that was passed by the Obama administration in 2010 and 2011 that never worked for anybody? Stephanie says, good night, everybody. Hope everyone has a good night. It was great seeing everyone. Remember, if you're interested in joining our general chat, just leave your name on one of the comments. Or PM Sandy Degg. Sandy Degg is spelled D-E-G as opposed to D-A-G, folks. Or me. And Rick Maynard says, regenerative agriculture. Yes, and then there's an A in there, Rick. It's regenerative agriculture. Lana says, how do you spell his name? Ketan Joshi, Ketan Joshi, Goshi. Sounds like an Indian name to me, that he's from India. I had, his Twitter thread up. I can get that again for you and quickly share the screen. There we go. Quickly share the screen for you, and this time you can see it, I think, in type that is large enough. Maybe I can share the whole screen and I won't even be on there. You can get it. Share. Let me get that. Ketan Joshi. There we go. Here is his Twitter thread. You can see that probably clearly now. And he is at Ketan J.O. On Twitter. And you're looking at the picture, of Ozzy Zahner there, who is one of the producers of the Planet of the Humans. Kind of a play on Planet of the Apes, I think, right? Okay, by the way, the storage capacity for wind and solar today, or for other forms of energy, is far greater than it was back in 2012 or 2010, which appear to be the times when a lot of the clips from the film were actually cut. And they don't talk about the improvements in storage since that time. In fact, if you look at the film, one of the instances they were talking about, I believe, the wind farm, which they were talking about, now has storage capacity in salt. And so they're storing the electrical energy in salt. And then when the sun isn't shining, they take the stored energy from the salt deposits that they have. And so the solar energy is never idle for them at that plant any longer. So there are different things that people are doing to combat the latency of solar energy. And one of it is greatly increased capability in storage batteries. I mean, storage solutions for solar energy to even things out over the grid. I mean, it's almost here. I think it's just a few years away now for having a very, very, very good solutions for this. And in many areas, in many plants, they already have good solutions for it. So, I mean, I think that film was way off base. I'm not a climate technology expert, okay, by any means, but I've read enough to know that Shakespeare's old saying, there is something rotten in the state, okay, of Denmark, really applied very, very well to that film. Very, very well to that film. I have no hesitation in saying that at all. There was something rotten in the state of Michael when he accepted that film for production. You heard it here first. Something rotten in the state of Michael. I'm sorry, I couldn't help that. Okay, so most of you have said good night. So I think that I'm going to say good night too. Okay, unless I see something very, very pregnant still on here. So thank you again for coming. And I'll see you tomorrow night when I'll be back with something that I hope is equally entertaining and attractive. So thank you very much for coming and for sharing and for being here. Oh, and I'd like to remind you as well, please share, like, and subscribe, especially at the YouTube when it goes up after this. And also, please remember my Patreon account at patreon.com/Joe_Firestone. And thanks very much, everybody. And Russell Gorman points out, says Lana, the film exposes the neoliberal infiltration of the green movement by the neoliberals. Yes, I think so. Thanks for coming, Sam. I hope this helped you. And Sam said, I just signed up with Stephanie to help Joe out. You too. But thank you, Sam, for helping out. I'm going to end the broadcast now. Good night, everyone. Thanks again.